Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Tema dneva talk show. Today we have a very special guest in our studio, Hungarian Foreign Minister Péter Szijjarto. Today we will speak about coronavirus crisis. Mr. Szijjarto, welcome.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
This medical crisis has hit Europe like a tornado. How is Hungary prepared for this crisis? How will your country act to prevent a critical mass of infections?
Look, we have to protect our people. We have to protect our country, since health is an asset which we only do have one. So we have to be very careful, very cautious, and we have to make our best to protect it on an individual and on national level as well, of course. So we have introduced very strict measures, including strict measures on the field of border control. According to the latest decisions, we would only allow Hungarian citizens to enter the territory of Hungary when it comes to the passenger transportation. We are, of course, prepared when it comes to the healthcare system. And we have introduced restrictions when it comes to openings or opening hours of shops and restaurants. And we have also, I wouldn't say we shut down the schools. What we have done is that we have changed the methodology of education. So instead of a personal presence, a personal enrollment of the children or the students at school, we have shifted to digital education, remote system, which does not require the personal presence of the kids at school. And with this, we hope we can slow down the dynamism of the coronavirus to be spread. I mean, we'll see. Because it's really worrying how the figures of infected persons look like in the neighboring countries. When it comes to Austria or Italy or even Germany, Spain, the numbers are growing. And in such a continent like Europe, where the density of the population is relatively high, stopping the virus puts pretty significant challenges ahead of the national governments.
Is Hungary sufficiently prepared? Do you have enough masks, respirators, hospital beds for seriously ill people?
Yeah, according to the emergency authority, we have the masks, we have the ventilators, we have the beds in the hospitals, and what is even more important, the medical staff, including nurses and doctors, at disposal. Although, of course, we do not know the size, the final size of the crisis. We do not know when the peak will come and how many infected persons that would involve. But so far, according to the report of the ministry responsible for healthcare, we have enough equipments and enough staff at disposal.
Well, your country and your Prime Minister have already, weeks ago, created a special task force and government team, so to speak, to tackle this problem. We in Slovenia haven't, this week practically. Can you tell us more about this organization, this operational body, who it includes, what is its tasks?
The Prime Minister has decided to create 11 so-called action groups. These action groups are very operational, and they are tackling respectively important fields or parts of the fight against the crisis. Because we have to understand that this crisis is a pandemic crisis, but it has impacts on all fields of life, including education, of course, through closing the schools. It has a huge impact on economy, no question. So we already have to think about how to amend the budget of this year and how to start replanning the budget for next year. We have to think about how we restart, how we reboost the economy, basically. Because as we do not see the end of the crisis, what we see is that countries are getting introverted. They're closing their borders. The connections are being cut. This means that the economy will heavily suffer. That's becoming obvious now. So the question is not whether it's going to suffer, the question is how much. A lot or a lot, or it's very complicated to express, but I think we understand how it will look like. So that's why it's very important to already think about how to reboost the economy, how to make sure that jobs will not be lost, how to make sure how we keep on things going. So it's very complicated. So these operational groups, these action groups, task forces basically supervise certain areas, and they put forward proposals, plans to how to address the situation.
Well, but for now in Hungary, the number of infected people is rising slowly from the first cluster that you detected, that your ministry detected. But here in Slovenia, it somehow exploded. Now we know that we acted too late. Will Hungary act more decisively and on time?
Look, we have altogether 40 cases, 40 infected persons. Unfortunately, one passed away, an old gentleman already. So even one is too much. But definitely comparing to the neighboring countries, our figures are still low. But I mean, if I have a look at the other countries, they started with low figures as well. And then they, as you say, exploded. So we don't know whether you can avoid the explosion. I might say you can slow it down, you can push it later, you can postpone it, which might be favorable from the perspective of the healthcare system to be able to manage these extra challenges. If explosion comes too quickly, too early, then the healthcare system can definitely suffer, which must be avoided.
Do you think that European institutions have acted too late, like during the 2015 migrant crisis? It seems, I mean, Ursula von der Leyen said that she's a bit, she doesn't like that countries are acting on their own. Should we wait for Brussels or should we act on our own?
We definitely have to act. It's not a question. All countries have to deal with this issue individually. Of course, European coordination is always important because there might be issues where European coordination could help. But if we had waited, if the countries had waited on Brussels to move, then the problem would be much bigger. So I think that the competence or the capacity to make decisions on a national basis under emergency circumstances is very important to be kept.
Slovenia might be in dire need of help in next days or weeks. Can we count on our Hungarian neighbors for aid? I will ask like that. What can you afford to send our way?
Yeah, you know, that's... we might say under normal circumstances, that's a good question. But no, it's not a good question, it's a bad question, because unfortunately we have to deal with that. And to be honest, I have no idea about the answer. Simply because of the fact that we don't know where these, happenings are moving to. So we don't know what's going to be the final stage, when the final stage would come, when the peak would come, whether any countries gonna be in a situation to afford any kind of assistance to the others. Although we see that those countries who might be in the downsizing phase, like China, they can give definitely help. But countries where the problem is just now being accumulated, it's very complicated to think about the external aspects. Of course, we are always open for dialogue, but in this case, it's going to be very complicated and challenging.
So it's actually buckle down and weather the storm, so to speak.
And be prepared. And be prepared. That's very important. That until you got the time to prepare, do everything in order to prepare when things really get closer to the peak.
we see in other countries, maybe your advice on this matter, people still don't get the seriousness of situation. How is in Hungary? Are people listening? Are they staying home? Do they use the public transportation still?
Look, people are very disciplined, no question about that. So now if you come to Budapest, driving from one place to another takes like half or a third time compared to usually. So definitely there are more and more people staying at home, more and more companies shift their methodology of operation towards home office. With the schools being closed, it's very important to make people understand that this doesn't mean that they should replace school with another program, but they the children should stay at home. So that's why I think it's going to be very, very important that the digital methodology of remote education will work properly, because then the students definitely can stay at home and study. We have basically shut down the operations of the universities. Now we have made a decision that shops and restaurants will have to close at 3 o'clock, with some exemptions like you have here as well, and we'll see. It's complicated because on one hand, as we started to say, there's only one health for everybody. But on the other hand, you have to keep things working. So you have to find the right balance in this regard, putting into consideration that protection of health must be number one, without a doubt.
Well, public life in Slovenia is currently almost completely suspended.
Yeah, but I think it's whole Europe, the situation is very similar.
Can we take some advice from countries where the situation is worse, let's say Italy, how to not act?
Well, look, I usually avoid criticizing and commenting domestic issues of other countries, and I think that such kind of an approach is very important under crisis times. So currently, I think we should cross fingers or pray for the Italians to be able to overcome this situation. I'm basically in a daily contact with their foreign minister, Luigi Di Maio. And he told me that there are unprecedented challenges ahead of us, especially in the region of Lombardy. I think it's the interest of all of ours that they overcome these challenges, that they can cool down the situation, they can manage. It would be extremely important. I hope they will be successful. Look, it's very, very complicated to say, because all countries have their own specificities. Italian way of life is totally different than to yours or ours, with which I don't want to judge. I just say that it's different, because we are different kind of people living in different circumstances. They are Mediterranean, we are not that much in your case. So we have to understand that that a population of or a nation of one country reacts totally differently to the very same phenomenon than a population of a nation of another country. We have to understand that. We have to take this into consideration as a reality. Well, we hope they will be over that.
For the last question, you probably already have some acts to help the economy, even now, not just later, the banks and so on. How is Hungary prepared on economic level to weather this storm?
Look, we have a working group or an action group which is entitled to put forward proposals in this regard. We definitely gonna work on it, as this is not the first crisis we have to tackle. We have come into office in 2010, which was maybe the worst time from the perspective of economic crisis for Hungary in the recent years. Then we had to make some very extraordinary measures, some very unorthodox kind of measures in order to help economy to grow. Now we are in a crisis as well, but in a totally different type. So we'll see what kind of measures will work out or not. What we know is that while protecting the health of the people, we have to make sure that supply of the people is uninterrupted. And that's why, we have made this decision that when it comes to transportation of goods, cargo, then we let it flow. And we allow the trucks coming into the country to deliver the goods which are necessary from the perspective of the supply of the Hungarian people and the Hungarian economy. Of course, then they have to return to where they came from. We allow transit to flow as well, although under very strict regulations that there are assigned motorways for the transit, for the trucks to transit through the country. So like when a truck comes from, let's say, Italy and would like to go to Romania through Slovenia and Hungary, they can make it. They have to comply with the regulations. They have to use the assigned highways. They have to use the assigned parking lots. But we have to make sure that while we protect the health conditions of the people, we make sure that the supply of the people and of the country is being ensured as well.
Mr. Szijjarto, thank you for your time. Stay in good health and be safe.
Thank you very much.
Hvala pa tudi vam, spoštovane gledalke in gledalci, za pozornost. Ostanite zdravi, ostanite doma. Lahko noč.